All right, good afternoon, RAP Working Group faithful. Thank you so much for joining us for today's meeting. I'm going to give a little bit of an intro. I am down in SoCal on my way to do one of our Roadmap to Recovery events for the mountain fire in Camarillo, in Ventura. This was a fire from December that has not gotten quite as much attention as the LA fires, but has the same challenges, and we are providing support into that community. So if the connection gets funky, my amazing colleague Emily Rogan will take over. But I want to thank everybody for making the time to come on today's program and acknowledge that this working group is doing some incredibly important work. And every time we have one of these meetings, the people that are speaking are on the cutting edge of progress in the direction that we are trying to move, of increasing the number of wildfire risk reduced homes, communities, neighborhoods, and then pairing that with bringing insurance programs into line with to reflect all the good work, risk reduction work that's happening, and all the partnerships that we've got going somewhat come together in these meetings. So I really want to thank Roberta MacIntyre. I can't see whether Dave Shew is with us yet. And can you help me with that?
I don't think he is joined.
Okay, so hopefully we will have Dave as well to talk about some of what's happening in Napa. But we have the wonderful Roberta MacIntyre. Roberta, it's good to have you back with us. Before we get into the program, I'll just give a quick snapshot of some of the developments that have been happening relevant to our shared goals. The sustainable insurance strategy is being implemented. A number of the insurers that one of their beefs about insuring homes in California is that they're not allowed to use these catastrophe models. And now with this to set the rates, right? They were saying past isn't as good an indicator of future as it used to be. Therefore, we have to do some projecting. We got to use these models. And whether or not, that's a good thing, it doesn't really at this point matter. It is where we are now. So California has joined the rest of the country in allowing insurers to do some projections. And so we are, right now, there's something called the PRID process, where the California Department of Insurance is reviewing a few of the new wildfire catastrophe models to determine whether they are appropriate to be used as a basis for setting rates. And among the many related work streams to the RAP working group and everything we're doing and working on here is Nancy Watkins' WUI Data Commons project that she talked to us about a few months ago. And then all the work that the California Department of Insurance has done to get people mitigation credits and the Safer from Wildfires program, all the work that CAL FIRE and all of our firefighting friends are doing all over the state on risk reduction, and then all the work that IBHS is doing, as well as the work that some of our insurer friends are now doing. So if those of you, if you missed the news about Mercury going up to Paradise as a result of having connected with Rebuild Paradise through one of these meetings, and then agreeing to insure 200 more homes there, that's done, that has happened. Mercury has picked up 200 homes in that area. And while that may seem like not a huge number, it's a great step in the right direction. And the CEO of Mercury was on stage a couple weeks ago with California Commissioner Lara at this Global Sustainable Insurance Summit talking about that model. And it was pretty exciting for us because it's a very tangible outcome of the collaboration we're doing in these meetings. Similarly, CSAA, who also connected with Rebuild Paradise at these meetings and then gave out the gravel grants up in Paradise, as really another insurer showing a commitment to rewarding risk reduction. And in addition to that, they also, as some of you may recall, we had a presentation about this at an earlier meeting about the modeling that a risk reduced home can still look really beautiful. They partnered with UC Berkeley on this design contest And so again, we're a lot of the people that come to these meetings are the movers and shakers, and we're just really grateful for that. There are a whole bunch of bills going through the legislature, which we shared on the last call, and the link to see. None of them, I don't think, have gotten to the finish. There's a lot of good still going into keeping California moving forward on risk reduction, despite some of what's been happening out of DC. And when I was looking at getting ready for today, I went back to see my last communication with David Shew, because just as Roberta is doing this incredibly important work in Sonoma, Dave, as Napa's Fire Administrator, I think that was his title, there was an announcement that he's going to be retiring at the end of the year. And so I was looking at our back and forth communications and seeing that the last time we communicated, it wasn't entirely clear about the BRIC funding. So what the status is. There's lots of rumors. So hopefully we'll be getting to some facts. One more shout out, in addition to giving my team the credit they deserve, Emily Rogan, Ben Laterno, Annie Barber, and Joe Loucher, who are fanned out with me all across California, teaching people about the steps that you need to take to reduce your risk, and then how important it is to have a fire safe community and be part of a Firewise Council and work with your neighbors. We did just host a shopping help webinar last week on the 29th. That's recorded. Home insurance shopping help webinar for anybody in the state of California. You can find that recording and a slide deck on our website. And I really want to thank the partners that are here that helped us spread the word about that event. We got a lot of really good participation in that shopping help event. And then I have to give Jen Goodland a shout out, because she's really modeling incredibly effective, proactive partnering and innovation in her community. And we're just really happy to see the fruits of that labor. So, so Roberta, we're going to jump in here with you. We heard from you, gosh, you were an early RAP working group speaker, because you've been in the trenches in Sonoma for a very, very long time. So thank you for being with us, Roberta with Fire Safe Sonoma. We're going to see.
I'm here.
You're here. You're here. All right, and you're at the helm. So if you want to highlight Roberta, there she is. You probably already did that. I'm the loser. I'm a tech loser. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, glad to be here. I was a little rushed getting into this meeting, so I found this office park and jumped into a vacant office space real quick to make this meeting, rather than try to find a Starbucks.
Oh, thank you for that. and I'm going to do a little I can relate sign. Good job. Hopefully no one's going to come in and give you the boot.
I'm kidding, of course. I'm at our satellite office.
Oh, okay. All right.
At Santa Rosa Fire Department.
Okay. All right. So why don't we start with sharing what you know about your BRIC grant? Because we, of course, when you got it, the county got it, we were so excited. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, well, Amy, we didn't get a BRIC grant. I was hoping Dave would be able to be here to speak about his. But I am aware of the county's BRIC grant that they got.
Okay.
And they were notified some time ago. Well, let me talk about what they got funded for first. So they were funded for, I think they have two BRIC grants, but the one I'm most familiar with, they received funding to cover, at the end of the day, people's work getting structural hardening improvements completed on their homes. And the project had two fundamental phases. phase one would be that the county would hire folks to go out and do assessments of properties within target areas within Sonoma County that they've identified as, most at risk from wildfire. So I think they had 3 or 4 target areas, maybe more than that. But anyway, within those areas, they deployed, they marketed a program asking people to sign up for home assessments that would assess the property owner's needs for structural hardening and defensible space work. And then subsequent from that assessment, phase 2 would be funding to allow those property owners to get work completed. So they completed phase 1. And along the way, we're telling folks, yeah, phase 2 is going to be after we're out here doing this assessment for you, we'll provide you with funding to do the work. So you've applied for phase 1, you've got the assessment, keep that in your back pocket. And when we unlock phase 2, which will be a while, because it was a federal grant, they had some things they had to complete before they could get there. They were actually telling people, yeah, in a little while, we'll be able to release some funding that allow you to apply for work on your property. Well, phase 2 is not going to happen. Phase 2 has been shut off. And so that's that BRIC grant. The other BRIC grant, now that I recall, was to basically do programmatic environmental review within targeted areas of the county, also, believed to be at high risk from wildfire. And phase 1 of that, was actually to do the environmental review. Phase 2 was to get some community scale field break work done in those geographies. So phase 1, the county did most of the environmental review. They did all of the environmental review that's typically done in-house, but they weren't going to do the second part of the environmental review, which would actually be the actual site visits and on the ground environmental studies and archaeological studies. They weren't going to do those studies until they've actually identified what projects they were going to put funding towards with the second part of their BRIC grant to allow the work on the ground to be done. So once again, that came to a screeching halt. So one of the things Fire Safe Sonoma is hoping to be able to do with that project is to leverage the initial environmental review work that's been done and partner with the county to the degree that we can in finding funding for the second part of the environmental review, and then subsequently the boots on the ground work to be done. So that's where we're at there. And that could be a perfect segue into one thing I would like to share, if allowed.
Absolutely. I just, the whole idea here is to communicate information. People who want to hear it. You're on the ground there. You've been a leader in risk reduction, so have at it.
Yeah, so one of the things we were able to do, we worked with the Fire Chiefs Association here in Sonoma County, and we were successful in getting a sales tax within the counties. We have a countywide sales tax that is earmarked for fire protection services in general, which includes additional staffing at some of the fire stations that really need more staffing to meet NFPA standard for response, as well as capital improvements and vehicles and equipment, apparatus and equipment. Another element of that sales tax measure provides for funding for Fire Safe Sonoma to maintain our bandwidth currently, which is really helpful. So with that infusion of cash annually, we're able to support 1.5 FTE, full-time equivalent staff, as well as our basic overhead expenses. And then additionally, married to that, the wildland mitigation element of that sales tax, there is roughly, depending on the amount collected annually, there's roughly $3 million a year available for fuels crews that we have access to. So we've stood up a system where folks could submit a project, and if they, have property owner permissions checked off, an environmental review has either been done or it's categorically exempt, and our project review committee subsequently feels like it's a valid project to point resources towards, then we will either and or provide fields crews to go out and do the work, and or provide assistance with our staff to fully develop the project. For example, if you've got a project that they've got property owner permissions, it's a community scale field break, but the environmental review hasn't been done, we'll help them find ways to fund the environmental review piece, as well as the subsequent, work, contracted work to get done. So that's something that we've been able to do. The measure failed in the first two instances as a county supported initiative, but on the third try, we put it in front of the voters as a citizens initiative. And the big difference for us there was, as a citizens initiative, it only required a simple majority, 50+1. So at that lower bar, we were able to get it passed, and believe it or not, we got it without a sunset clause. So that was pretty remarkable.
That's amazing. Did you say a 2% sales tax?
1/10 of 1%.
1/10 of 1%. And
yeah.
that's earmarked. And so it sits there earmarked.
Yeah, but for wildland fire safety and mitigation, what that does for our county is it provides the equivalent of 6 staff specifically assigned to wildland fire safety and risk reduction, funded through the several fire departments, not through us. And then it provides us with sustainable funding, to maintain our current bandwidth, as well as roughly $3 million a year in fuels reduction work from fuels crews that we already have stood up.
Okay. So Roberta, so Fire Safe Sonoma, would you say that you're equally focused on individual risk reduction and public space risk reduction, or are you prioritizing one over the other?
No, well, regardless of what I want to prioritize from, now forward, I mean, it used to be, yeah, Roberta, what do you think? What should Fire Safe Sonoma be doing? And most of the time the board, pretty much was unanimous to go that direction. However, with this infusion of tax funding, I felt it necessary to create a committee to, manage where that, $3 million a year anyway would go. That should not be my decision alone, nor the board's. I think it needs to be a decision made by subject matter experts, and that's where we're headed. Currently, we have a subcommittee created by our board to get this thing stood up and running. As things evolve and as projects become more sophisticated in terms of the ones that are being submitted, we will grow that committee. And, it looks like it could be a committee of anywhere from 7 to 15 individuals, depending on, how things evolve, honestly. So that's how that's going to work. I'm not sure if that fully answered your question or not.
No, it did. Now, as far as Fire Safe Sonoma's relationships with vendors, or let's call them, I don't know if you were on the last one, we heard from the statewide Fire Safe Council about their vendor guide, how they are developing resources for property owners, for trusted companies that will come and do the work, you know. Can you talk a little bit about how you're approaching that at Fire Safe Sonoma?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we just had a question about that this morning with one of our staff. And basically, if we get, historically, it's been our board's position that we won't recommend, quote unquote, certify any contractor, you know, regardless of our relationship with them. You know, we could have somebody hypothetically who said, hey, I want to give you guys, $50,000, but I want my logo on your website and I won't want you guys to send work to us. We're not doing that, for a handful of reasons. Probably the biggest and most important is that our board is incredibly risk averse. So they don't want to recommend somebody who does a crummy job, gets sued, and then us get named in the suit, regardless of whether it was righteous or not. And so with that said, we were pretty happy to see the California Council solicit vendors and create that vendor list. We were for a while sending people to Fire Safe Marin site because they had a vendor list for a while, but then they seemed to back off on that as well, probably for the same reasons that we decided not to go that route. So, as recently as this morning, we sent somebody to that vendor list to say, hey, we don't have recommends, but here, check this out. Here's some folks that have been vetted you might be interested in.
Yeah, no, that I would, if you could see me doing another one relating to, it is from the beginning of this journey, we were always talking about, well, the lot rides on what entity isn't going to end up doing inspections and certifications. Is it going to be the local fire departments? Is it going to be IBHS? Is it going to be some third party? And it's evolving, right? And it's sort of all of those things. But we also, another question was, who's going to come and, develop that? Who's going to be the ones to limb the trees and put the screens in and box the eaves and do the, replace out the wood fences with metal and all those things. Is there, knowing that those are a range of maybe different skills and different equipment that's needed, but knowing that those things were going to evolve and that the ecosystem was going to develop, and it is developing, and we have a number of people that come to these meetings that are in, kind of finding their way into that space. But it remains, that we don't want to be on the line if there's a dispute with the homeowner, right?
And if I could speak to that a little bit, we explored, training up, Conservation Corps of the North Bay folks to do, some of those structural hardening things. I was a couple years ago imagining having fun standing up a CC, team or two that's trained up to do that sort of work. But what we ran into with the Conservation Corps is that their supervisor to staff ratio wasn't going to pencil out. Because you're looking at a crew of 2, maybe 3 to do some structural hardening at a house where, their, staff, leader to worker ratio is more like, 1 to 12, for the pencil out to them. And I'm like, well, we're not going to put a crew of 12 doing structural hardening on one house.
Right.
We've done it with flexible space projects, particularly roadside. We've done a lot of that with the Conservation Corps of North Bay, but it just wasn't getting any traction there. And we even tried working with Habitat for Humanity to do it, and it wasn't quite working very well there either. They kept wanting to go, well, they want smoke alarms. What about that? And I'm like, well, that's not our deal. we're structural hardening and wildland fire safety. Well, what about extinguishers? Can you guys fund that? Can you, well, that's not what we do. So that, we tried that with Habitat for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and it just didn't evolve the way I had hoped. I had imagined, training up some Habitat volunteers to do just structural hardening.
Mhm.
It'd be really cool, but it didn't go anywhere, at least not with our Habitat for Humanity group here.
Okay. We got a question from Lori Templeton. Do you want to create a vendor list in the future? Or are you thinking as long as the Fire Safe Council statewide has done theirs?
Yeah, I think that the fact that the California Council has one would further give our board rationale for not standing up one within our organization.
Mhm.
I would love to put something together where we had some local trusted talent to point people to, but our board, if I brought that up again, they would probably go, "Oh no, just point them to the California Council's list. That's fine."
I gotcha.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of work. What metrics do you use to objectively rank a contractor? And you have to vet them. Who's going to go take the time in your organization to get on the, study the business and professions code to see what's required, number one. Number two,
Right.
check the contractor's license board to see if they're licensed and bonded. Number three, make sure they currently have insurance, et cetera. I used to be a licensed contractor, so I kind of have an idea of what's involved in all that. So first you
Mhm.
have to vet these people. When I was the fire marshal for the county, that's one of the things that they would do at the counter with every building permit. Who's your contractor? Okay, so the county would ensure that they were licensed, bonded, and insured. But so we would have to do that as well. And we're not doing that.
Mm. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was just at a conference of state legislators from around the country who sit on the insurance committees in their states. And United Fall Soldiers is advancing a model bill for the states to pick up that would require insurers to give the homeowner aerial images if they're using them, tell them what flaws they identified that caused them to want to non-renew or reject their application, give them time to fix it, and then if they provide proof that they've remedied the problematic conditions, that the insurer would be required to offer them a renewal policy. And for the first time, I mean, we always hear insurers have a big problem in general with mandates. Obviously, they would prefer not, to have mandates, but particularly with the mandate to offer, it's been very, very sensitive. Very, they have a very strong, like, you're not going to know, tell us who to take and not take. But obviously, one of the things that keeps setting us back, one step forward, one step back, is people saying, well, why should I spend the time and money if I'm still going to get dropped and if I'm not going to get rewarded, and it's a 3% discount, big deal, blah blah. So we're working to address all those issues, but at this legislators conference, one of the insurer trade associations said, raise the issue of, well, what about DIY risk reduction work? Like why should we accept somebody's word when they did it themselves? And I because some of these things people can do, right, depending
Right.
on their capabilities, right?
I have a whole presentation on how to do it yourself.
Right. And we want, if you can, that's obviously the best thing, right? If you can. And then another one, it's funny, one of the lawmakers got very offended. She said, my husband is a DIY guy, and the quality of his work is great. And I don't see why. And so I asked CSAA representative, she was kind enough to come on to our shopping help webinar panel, which was great, and answer questions. And I said, well, is your company, will they accept a DIY, proof photographs? And she said that they will.
Okay.
And which I thought was great, because insurers accept lots of different, photographic proof of things, as set in some context. So if anybody, we have one more question for you, and then we're going to jump over to Dave. could the vendors themselves get vetted through the California Fire Safe Council? But I don't think that's a question Roberta can answer.
I can't, I don't know how.
Yeah, but if we do have somebody from the Fire Safe Council with us, if you can just pop something in the chat there, that'd be great. Roberta, thank you so much for
Can I
sharing.
just-
Oh, yes,
Let me
please.
just do one really fast shout out
Yes,
too,
yes, yes.
with regard to funding. So we have 4 California Climate Action Corps fellows. And about 3 weeks ago, they all got letters. They were AmeriCorps fellows initially. They all got letters saying, you guys don't have a job anymore. Too bad, so sad. Have a great life, kind of a thing. And the California Climate Action Corps was able to actually find state funding to keep them employed to finish out their term. So not only BRIC grants are an issue with a lot, is an issue for a lot of us, it's stuff like that too. I mean, it's nuts. If we don't have our fellows helping us out, the multiplied value we get of having 4 fellows in addition to our regular staff is huge. It's logarithmically increased. If we didn't have those fellows, our overall bandwidth would shrink immensely. I'll leave it there. Thanks, Amy. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, Amy, you're on mute.
We got a question from Peter Failer of whether you would be willing to make your DIY presentation available to his group. So Peter, if you don't have a way to get directly to Roberta, you can go through Emily and she can connect you.
Yeah, and real quick, you can find it on our YouTube channel. It's not hard to find on our YouTube channel.
Okay, great, great. And Priscilla, I see your note. It's very disappointing. It's more than disappointing about losing AmeriCorps workers and resources. Chris, I see Chris Danch, I see you have a question. Is it for Roberta?
Yes, please. Thank you. Hi, Amy. Hi, Roberta.
Hi.
My name is Sudeep Modipalli Rao. I'm actually a transplant from Santa Rosa. And I now live in Ojai, California with Chris and Callie and others at the Ojai Fire Safe Council. I just was curious if you came across any builders, actual builders who are willing to innovate in materials and construction in such a way that they can actually, where the building can self-insure, where the insurance cost for the next 30 years can actually be factored into the price of the building. And if there's any kind of innovative things like that. Thanks.
I'm unfamiliar with that. I have no experience with that.
Well,
Amy.
all right. Well, thank you for that question. I'm sorry, normally I don't have the hand raise thing. We just use the chat, but we had a little funkiness with the chat. There's somebody trying to talk. No. All right. Thank you so much, Roberta. And keep up the great work. Keep up, keep hope alive. That sounds like all I'm gonna say. So I want to welcome our next guest, Dave Shew. Dave, great to see you. I met Dave at, I think I first met him at a Napa Vintners fair. They do a really, really good job at bringing a whole bunch of risk reduction experts in and having booths and having local homeowners be able to come and learn about what they can do to reduce risk. And then Dave was there and we ran into each other after. And I learned a little bit about Dave's career as a firefighter, his expertise there. And then we had him, you were a very early rap presenter. You shared your video about things that we know about the properties of surroundings and structural conditions and how that matters and all that. And you're probably as deep an expert on wildfire risk reduction and then the related politics as anyone. So thank you for joining us, Dave. We heard from your Sonoma, somewhat, not exactly a counterpart, as you work for the county, Roberta works for Fire Safe Sonoma. And so she talked a little bit about the BRIC grant, but since that grant went to the county, not to her organization, we're kind of turning to you for the full, first of all, congratulations, I guess, on your pending retirement. That's bad news for all of us, but good news for your family and you. You put in quite an illustrious career. Are you planning to stick with this stuff after you retire a little bit, or?
Oh, I feel like I definitely will be still working on some things, and yeah, this has been a really sort of sudden transition, but it directly is a result of the BRIC grant status change, and I can get into that a little more if you like. I'll let you lead the questioning, but last Friday. For anyone on this call who hasn't heard yet, last Friday was my last day at work with the County of Napa. And so I'm coming to you today as sort of a newly minted consultant and private citizen. So I have a little more flexibility to talk about things, not having that umbrella over me. But so what would you like to hear?
Well, no, you inviting me to ask you for some dirt, but I won't do that. No, I'm joking. So you were the county fire administrator. Now you're back here with the rest of us. As a worker bee. So well, why don't we start with? I'm guessing that the Trump administration's decision on the BRIC grants meant that there wasn't going to be funding to have a fire administrator. Is that a fair statement or no?
Well, not exactly. Napa County did not create the fire administration position based on the funding of the BRIC grant.
Oh, okay.
The creation of the position did include a fair amount of the work for that position to be focused on the BRIC grant because they knew that the county was going to be awarded the BRIC grant. And so I came on board in October of 2023. And that was always sort of one of the focuses of the fact that this BRIC grant was coming and that it was going to take quite a lot of work to deal with the organization and management of that grant. Collectively, it was $50 million for those of you who aren't familiar with the BRIC grants, but the BRIC grant program across the entire United States had approximately about 150 BRIC grants that had been awarded, mostly back east and in the Midwest, to deal with hurricane issues, flooding issues, those kinds of things. At some point in time, FEMA pivoted and recognized the fact that maybe they should start looking at awarding some BRIC grants for communities to deal with fire resiliency ahead of wildfires. And that resulted in Sonoma County being the very first wildfire resilient BRIC grant that was awarded in the country. That was followed fairly shortly, less than a year later, by Napa County being announced that we would receive our award for the BRIC grant also. And then in succession, there were 3 other counties that also received awards of BRIC grants for wildfire, and that was Santa Cruz County, Mendocino County, and Nevada County. So the 5 counties collectively were going to put forward, had it gone through to completion, approximately $250 million of fire prevention funding for not just vegetation treatment projects, but also for home hardening, which I think is one of the most critical, I'll say, missing links to the wildfire resiliency scenario that we have today. And so it's been greatly
I'm sorry,
disappointing.
the missing link is that the funding for individual homeowners.
Yes. Yes, because what's happening is, we've been working and focused on vegetation treatment projects for decades. We know that changing the landscape alters the behavior of fire. It can dramatically decrease the potential for fire impacts on neighbors and communities and individual structures. But with the last 10 years of the way fire behavior and intensity has increased, we also know that despite all the vegetation treatment projects that you want to do, The reality is that with the increasing impacts of weather and warming temperatures and climate change, and therefore the increase in fire behavior and the impacts of embers that are blowing with these wind conditions that we see today in Los Angeles just in January and so on and so forth, that really, and this is a little controversial for some people to hear me say, but regardless of how much vegetation treatment you do, those 1 to 2% of the fires that are being very heavily driven by wind-blown events, when you get that ember cast that is affecting our communities today, until we start dealing with the ignition strategies of reducing the impacts of embers from igniting our structures, we're still going to see these kinds of catastrophic results from wildfires, despite how much vegetation treatment we do. Because it is the embers that we know are the primary cause of structure ignitions today. And so it was very disappointing for me to see the removal of the BRIC grant program by FEMA across the country. And ironically, the announcement came out on a late Friday afternoon a couple of months ago in early April when it was, I mean, literally, that was back in the time. I don't know if anybody recalled, but it was at the time when we were suffering from a lot of massive flooding events that were occurring throughout the Midwest, in Arkansas and Tennessee and Kentucky. And I know that some of those BRIC grants had been awarded to numerous communities across that part of the country to deal with flood events. And I can only imagine the disappointment for these people who quite literally got the notice that their BRIC grants and all the money that they were trying to deal with flood control issues was literally evaporating in real time, probably as they were paddling canoes down the streets of their towns and things like this. So it really came as a bit of a shock to me that they were, right in the face of, while all of those kinds of catastrophic events were occurring, the decision was made to withdraw all the funding across the entire country to help try to mitigate those kinds of problems. So it's very disappointing to everyone across the country, I'm sure, not just us here in California from a wildfire perspective. But in Napa County as well as Sonoma County, it was approximately a $50 million of spending. In Napa County, it was $35 million from the federal side, with a matching $15 million from the county. So leading up to a total of $50 million. So that all basically disappeared overnight.
So literally, how much of the BRIC grant funds had flowed in at the time that it got cut off?
So we had not been involved. We hadn't gotten into the real project work quite yet as
Oh, wow.
in Sonoma. So the BRIC grants were divided into a two-phase program. The first phase was basically for planning. And so we had been engaged in looking at how to set the stage for actually doing the work, which of course involves public outreach and education and marketing for the campaign to get people to sign up for it. It also involved hiring contractors to do the environmental analysis for vegetation treatment as well as home hardening treatments. And then also looking at people to really look at how we were going to manage those kind of projects. I mean, that's a lot of funding with a lot of contractors doing a lot of work. In Napa County, we made the decision to go ahead and do RFPs to hire out contractors to do that work. So we had gone through the RFP process. We had people out in the field doing that work at the time that the announcement was made to cancel everything. So we have systematically been going through essentially, basically we put everything on hold the minute that it happened. Ironically, we finally, we had just submitted a request to extend phase one by 1 year to give us more time to get everything together. Um, and the irony of all of this is that just last week, we received official confirmation from FEMA authorizing us to continue phase one at some level. But by this point in time, the county had already made the decision that we needed to move on. And I think rightly so, because quite frankly, I don't know that anybody would make a decision to invest the kind of money that it takes for the county. Say, for example, the county of Napa, we had to go ahead and pay for all the funding up front and then submit invoices to be reimbursed by FEMA. I don't think anybody out there trusts what's going on right now, that we would be guaranteed to get
be
those funding
reimbursed.
monies back. So I
Wow.
think the decision by the county was the right one, to make the decision to step away. And we are now going through the closeout for the grant that we had so desperately hoped would see through to completion, but it's not going to happen now.
Well, it's as crushing and absurd. And, you know, I was at a conference of insurance regulators where they always have somebody who reports from the Capitol. This was in March. And when she reported on the administration wiping NOAA data, wiping out all this weather tracking data, you know, I immediately went to the APCIA, they're the Association of Property Casualty Insurers, lobbyists, and said, hey, you're lobbying to get this back, right? And you're lobbying, you know, assuming they have some pull in DC, you guys are lobbying to get the BRIC grants restored too, right? Right. And they said that they are, but I guess my question to you, Dave, is obviously we don't want to go quietly into that good night here. We need to, I mean, that's the fact that the county could be out a lot of money here that's just part of the outrage. But the
Right.
worst is that it's so short-sighted, and I know I speak for everybody here. You know, thank you for being candid about it, but like we have to be candid about it because I think people need to understand, you know, that political ideology is one thing, but the insurance industry does not think that climate change is a hoax,
Yeah.
and they are and have been adapting their operations in anticipation of these
Yes.
extreme weather events, wildfires in January, you know, kind of thing. And you know, we're all here trying to like help the public adapt. You know, insurers are taking care of themselves, and we are trying to take care of the people here. But hoping that you know, I don't expect this administration, you know, if they perceive something was a Democratic program, it was a Biden program. I get that politically they're not going to want to go back, but have you gotten any kind of buzz from any kind of allies that might, you know, that there might be, I mean, a lot of these things, you know, the tariffs, they come and they revoke and they come back,
Right.
and, you know, and FEMA, you know, is FEMA going away? Is FEMA going to stay? So there's rumors and there's worrying and everything. But as far as like the BRIC program, do you know of any efforts to try to convince the administration or any allies that are working to try to reverse?
Well, yes, certainly. And I'm sure this is all public, you know, very public information that of course, after the cancellation of the BRIC grant, I think there's a class action lawsuit. I think 20 states collectively are trying to go through a lawsuit process to declare that it is illegal for the executive branch to cancel funding appropriated by Congress. So I have no idea where that will go. I don't think anybody does, and we'll have to just kind of track that and see what happens. The irony of all of this, I think, is the fact that the actual program of BRIC as we know it today was actually created in 2018 during the prior Trump administration. So it actually is a little confusing to all of us as to why this is taking place, because it wasn't a Biden invention. It
No, it
was
wasn't.
already in place.
So
And
was
so,
was this a Doge thing? Do we think? No, that it
well,
was.
I think, you know, the speculation can run rampant, and I don't really want to dive into the politics of what
Yeah,
speculation is.
got it. Got it.
It really doesn't matter. There's various rumors out there on the street, which I don't really care one way or the other. What my discussion was on the very day that the BRIC grant was formally announced that it was going to be terminated.
Mhm.
I marched up and around the halls in Napa County Administration, essentially just trying to get people to understand the fact that this funding source has been taken away does not in any way, shape, or form change the reality of the wildfire risk that we all face today. That remains right in our front of our faces. We have to deal with it on some level. I think that Napa and Sonoma County, I'm not as in touch with the rest of the folks from Santa Cruz, Mendocino, and Nevada as to how they're approaching this, but I definitely know in Napa and Sonoma, since we were so close together and working on this very closely, because we share a border, um, that fire risk has not changed. And we all know that it's going to continue to get worse and that we have to figure
Right.
out a way to continue to deal with this. We do have other grants. There are HMGP grants that are also from FEMA that we've
What is that?
received. Hazard
HM?
mitigation grant
Oh,
program.
right. Okay. Okay.
So hazard mitigation grants are still available. There is
Okay.
funding going through right now for the 2025 application process to put notice of interest into achieving grant funding for continuing some programs. It won't be at the scale of what the BRIC grant was, and it's likely not going to allow the scope of looking at home hardening projects. But there are still grant dollars available from the federal side of things, although at a much lower level than what was out there. So, we're still going to have to continue to find whatever funding sources are available for us and pursue those. As Roberta was talking about, Napa made an attempt similar to Marin County and Sonoma. There was what was called Measure L about 3 years ago on the ballot that was unsuccessful. And so, of course, there is discussions. There are discussions going on about maybe resurrecting that and approaching that option for a ballot-based option of providing a stable long-term funding source to help pay for fire prevention efforts. That's one idea that is being discussed and kicked about right now. So we'll see where all of that goes, but it's still relatively new. And with the dismantling of BRIC, clearly when you lose that kind of funding source, the county wanted to make some adjustments to the fire administration position and such. And it really was, in my discussions with the county, it felt like a good time to hand that off to someone else and let them deal with that while I kind of got back into the realm of helping in a more private way, for consulting and things like that. So that's what I'm going to be doing after a little time off here from, my retirement on Friday. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. All right. I don't know. You have grandkids, I think, right?
No, not yet,
Oh, you
but
don't? Okay. So you're okay.
but our daughter
Um,
lives in Maui, so hopefully
so
we'll
you
get.
gotta, yeah, you gotta go over there. I mean, you probably went over there after the fire, right? Did you?
No, I didn't go back after the fire. I have been there a couple of times, but it's all closed off. I'm actually getting my intel. Our daughter is actually working as a planner with the Maui County Planning Department, and she, in that position, has a lot of opportunities to go down into the areas that are still closed off by, to the public. The Front Street areas and things like that are still not reopened, and so she gets to report back to me as far as like what that recovery process is looking like and things
Yeah.
like that. And I'll actually be traveling over there later this month for an insurance conference with NAMIC, the National Association of Mutual Insurance Companies. And Roy Wright and I will be speaking over there later this month at a conference.
Okay. Yeah, we have a staff person on Maui helping with the recovery. And last I heard, there have been 400 building permits pulled. So there's some progress there.
Some progress.
Some progress. So if somebody asks you what is Napa's game plan in the aftermath of this a very, very short-sighted, unfortunate BRIC termination? What is it?
Well, like I said, Napa is continuing to work on the projects that we already have in place, the funding from the HMGP grants, and there's several other funding sources from both state and federal sides of things, as well as the county stepping into this space very, very heavily. Napa County leaned into funding out of their own pocket a lot of prevention efforts right after the 2020 fires. And so there's been quite a bit of history of Napa really being very aggressive at helping to improve the fire resiliency. And of course, our local Fire Safe Council, Napa Community Firewise Foundation, has just been a real godsend to really be in place to help fund and manage a lot of those grants and spearhead a lot of those prevention programs. So there has been a tremendous amount of work done. There's been great improvements made, and that will continue. Unfortunately, at probably a slower scale than what we had hoped for with the BRIC grant. But we're going to utilize what we can, and we're going to continue to research and find other funding sources to keep that movement going forward.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for everything that you have been doing, that I believe that you're going to continue to do. I certainly hope you get a little bit of a break, but it sounds like you're going to stay in it, which is good because just like what we do here at these working group meetings, we build on each other's good ideas and each other's successes and failures, and we all try to keep moving forward together. So I've been in lots and lots of meetings with folks that are on the utility side, looking at all the money that the utilities are spending, outspending the state, whatever, 71. And we have lots of opportunities as long as we keep communicating with each other. So thank you for being a guest speaker, and keep up the good work, and enjoy a little peace. And I'm going to turn it over to Emily Rogan for our closing announcements.
All right. Well, a big thank you to Roberta and a big thank you to Dave for being our speakers. I just have 3 little announcements. So we have, if you didn't already see the link to the recording of our webinar that we did last week, I'm putting it in the chat. Again, thank you to everyone who has helped us spread the word about our 2025 home insurance survey. Still open, still need your support to get it out to the community so we can keep our fingers on the pulse of what's happening in terms of home insurance, who's being dropped, any new people coming in, all these different pieces. And then we do not have a date for our next wrap meeting, but you'll be hearing an email from me as soon as we get a date. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, or you have a suggestion on who we haven't heard from, or if you have a program in your community that you want to bring to the group, just send me an email, emily@uphelp.org. And that's it.
Well, thank you so much, Em. And those of you who, if you had questions and they didn't get answered, feel free to shoot them our way. I know that both of our speakers will be happy to answer follow-up questions. And Ann, MC, thank you for your suggestion about highlighting the successful passage in Colorado of a bill that pertains to insurance mitigation discounts. We did support that bill, and we were happy to have a representative at the bill signing. So with all that, everybody keep up this incredibly important work you're doing. Thank you for coming to these meetings. And that's a wrap.